Ned Stark had always been quiet, cold, and loyal. That's what they said of him, the North's stone-faced warden, a man of honor, a man of winter. But even winter had its fires, buried deep under the ice. And Ned's fire had a name. A name he had buried so far beneath his soul, he feared if he spoke it aloud, the world itself might burn. He stood by the window of the Tower of the Hand, watching the Red Keep stretch into the sky, an ugly thing made of blood and ambition. King's Landing had never felt like home. Too hot, too loud, too false. The South reeked of perfumes and poison, and Ned missed the honest cold of Winterfell. But it wasn't the weather that made him uneasy. It was being this close to the throne. His throne. No one knew. Not even Catelyn. She thought she knew all his secrets. She didn't. She thought the lie about Jon Snow was the biggest thing he carried. It wasn't. That lie had been easy compared to the truth that clawed at him every day of his life. His real name wasn't Eddard Stark. It was Varon Targaryen, the son Aerys never wanted, the son Rhaella bore in shame during her exile in Dragonstone just before her death. He was smuggled out, covered in blood and wrapped in silence, handed to Rickard Stark by a dying maid who'd once served at court. Rickard, duty-bound and eager to avoid the wrath of a mad king, claimed the boy as his own a last favor to the realm, he called it. And so the last dragon was raised as a wolf. Ned had never spoken of it, never dared, not even to Benjen, not even to Robert, especially not to Robert. Robert would have split his head open the moment he knew. He had always hated dragons. And if Ned had revealed the truth after the rebellion, after the bodies were burned and the swords dropped, he would have become the next target. No matter their friendship, Robert would never forgive a living Targaryen, even one raised as a Stark. So Ned kept the lie. Let Robert wear his crown. Let the realm believe the dragons were dead. He married Catelyn. He ruled the North. He did his duty. And he watched his people suffer under a crown he should have worn. When Jon Arryn died, Ned had felt the ground shift. Old secrets had begun to rise again, cold by whispers and shadows. Robert had come with his wine and old jokes, but Ned saw it in his eyes. The king was slipping, and the realm with him. And now he wanted Ned by his side again, to be his hand, to clean up his mess. How bitter it was to kneel in front of a throne that was rightfully his, to protect a king who had once hunted his bloodline to extinction, to hold his tongue when Robert joked about burning the last of the Targaryens. He had stared at the Iron Throne once, after Robert had gone hunting. Alone in the throne room, Ned had walked up the steps, hands shaking not from fear, but from fury. He reached out just once and touched the cold, jagged metal. It cut his paw. The pain was sharp, but not deep. The blood dripped slowly, one red drop at a time, down his knuckles. Was it the throne rejecting him, or reminding him? That night, he dreamed of fire. A woman's scream. A babe born in the dark. A crown made of ash and sorrow. And he knew, as he always had, the truth would never set him free. It would only kill him. But what haunted Ned the most wasn't the throne or the bloodlines. It was Jon, the boy with a bastard's name and a king's soul. If anyone deserved the truth, it was him. And yet, even Jon lived a lie, a double lie. Because if Ned was a Targaryen, then Jon wasn't his nephew. He was his son. Ned sat in the godswood of the Red Keep, beneath a pale southern weirwood that had no face, no heart. It wasn't like the one in Winterfell. This tree didn't speak to him. It didn't remember. It had no soul. But Ned still sat under it, because it was the only place in King's Landing where he could breathe. The city was too full of whispers. Servants talking about the queen's brothers. Lords grumbling about the king's debts. spies watching every corner. And above them all, Robert bloated, drunk, and blind to the rot creeping through his own court. Every day, Ned felt more like a stranger in a land that should have been his birthright. He closed his eyes and listened, not to the birds or the rustling trees. He listened for the past. He heard his own voice, younger, trembling. "Promise me, father. Promise me they'll never know what I am." Rickard's face had been grim. "Not even your own children, boy. This name will die with me, and you'll carry a new one. A Stark's name. No dragon ever wore fur, but it hadn't died. Ned had kept it alive, deep inside. He never wrote it down, never whispered it aloud, but he'd etched it into his soul so no one else could. And now, as he looked across the garden to where Sansa sat with Septa Mordane, he wondered what blood ran through her. Did she carry the wolf's honor or the dragon's fire? Arya was more obvious. That wild spirit in her eyes, he saw too much of Ralla in that child. The rebellion had tried to burn that blood out, but it had survived, quiet, patient, hidden in the very family that had helped destroy it. He felt a shadow nearby before he saw it. Varys. The spider stood at the edge of the trees, smiling politely, as if they were old friends. "Lord Stark," Varys said softly. "May I sit?" Ned gestured, annoyed but not surprised. "You always slither where you're not wanted, don't you?" Varys gave a small bow. "I go where whispers lead me." Ned's hand moved to his sword's hilt by habit. Not to draw it, just to feel its weight. "And what do they say now?" "That you're not a man made for this city. That you're too honest for politics. And that you have secrets deeper than anyone suspects." Ned turned sharply. "Speak plainly, eunuch. I have little patience for riddles." Varys looked around, then leaned in close. "The north is cold, but dragons once flew there, didn't they?" The air tightened. Every muscle in Ned's body tensed. "What do you think you know?" "I know enough to be afraid," Varys whispered. "Afraid for the realm, if certain truths come to light. Afraid for you, Lord Stark, if the wrong ears hear the wrong story." Ned didn't respond. His fingers gripped the roots beneath him. Varys continued, "I am not your enemy. I serve the realm. And sometimes, to protect the realm, lies must live longer than truth. You understand this better than most." "You don't know what I understand?" Ned said. "Don't I?" Varys raised a thin brow. "You protect Jon Snow like a son. But I hear he is not your nephew at all. He is your son. And you are not the man you pretend to be." A cold silence fell. Even the wind seemed to stop. Ned stood. "If you ever speak of this again—" "I won't," Varys said quickly, raising a hand. "But others might, if they dig too deep. If Queen Cersei starts asking questions. If Littlefinger gets curious. If Stannis smells blood." Ned stared at him, stone-faced. "I don't want the truth," Varys said. "I want peace, for the people. That's why I came to you. I thought you should know. Not everyone is blind, not anymore." He bowed and disappeared as swiftly as he had come. Ned remained under the tree long after, heart pounding. It had begun. The cracks were showing. The secret, held for decades, was leaking through the walls. And Catelyn, she would be next. He didn't know which would destroy her more, the truth about Jon or the truth about him. Catelyn Stark had never trusted Jon Snow. Not truly. She'd been civil for Ned's sake, distant for her own. Every glance at the boy brought a fresh wound. He was a living mark of some shame Ned would never explain. Her husband, who never. Lead had buried that one truth so deep, even love couldn't dig it out. And so she learned to live beside the lie. But now she was in King's Landing. surrounded by people who wore deception like fine silk. And something in the way Ned moved here, quiet, stiff, watching shadows, made her wonder if she'd ever known him at all. That morning, she walked the stone corridors of the Red Keep alone, keeping her head down. The city felt wrong, too warm, too loud. Even the air had a stench, sweat, and secrets. She passed a pair of gold cloaks who bowed without meaning it, then stepped aside as Lord Baelish strolled by with his false charm and fox eyes. He always smiled too easily, and he always looked too long. "Lady Stark," he called as she tried to pass. "You look lost. Should I send someone to find your honor for you?" She stopped. She hated that man. Hated his mouth, his games, his memories. "I know where I'm going," she said. "Do you?" he asked, stepping closer. "Because your husband seems not to." The Honorable Ned Stark, hiding in the shadows, speaking to spiders, reading old parchments. Curious, isn't it? She narrowed her eyes. "What are you implying?" Littlefinger smiled thinly. "Only that secrets fester in heat, and the Red Keep is very hot." She left him there, teeth bared behind his smirk, and made her way to Ned's chambers. She shouldn't have gone in, but something inside her, worry, suspicion, or something colder, pushed her forward. The door was unlocked. That was the first odd thing. The second was what she found inside. Ned's chambers were always neat, simple, northern, but the desk was a storm. Scrolls unrolled, ink still wet. Letters addressed to lords she'd never seen him speak of. And there, folded beside a half-burned candle, was a parchment marked with a sigil she hadn't seen since the war. The three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. It was a list. Names, houses, bloodlines, some crossed out, some circled. And under them, a line scribbled in Ned's hard script. "If the truth is fire, how long can we keep freezing it?" She dropped the parchment like it had burned her. What truth? She backed away from the desk, heart racing, her mind filled with pieces she didn't want to assemble. John, the coldness in Ned's eyes whenever she brought him up, the way he never explained, the way he only promised. And now this, dragons, bloodlines, fire. The door creaked open behind her. Ned stood there, tired, worn, older than he had looked even the day before. "Cat," he said, "what are you doing?" She turned to face him, holding nothing now but fury. "You lied to me?" His eyes fell on the desk, on the parchment. Then slowly he closed the door behind him. "Not just to you," he said quietly. "To everyone." She stepped forward. "What is this, Ned? Dragons? Bloodlines? What in the name of the gods are you hiding?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, as if seeing a choice he could no longer delay. "Not everything in this world can be explained," he said. "Some things must be buried, for the good of the realm." She shook her head. "You're talking like a Targaryen." Silence. A deep, painful silence. He didn't correct her, and Catelyn felt the floor shift beneath her. "Oh gods," she whispered, "you're not just hiding, John. You're hiding yourself." His face, so full of stone and sorrow, didn't deny it. "I never meant to lie to you," he said. "But you did. For your safety. For our children. For peace." Her breath caught. "Who are you, Ned?" He looked at her with a fire in his eyes she had never seen before. "I am the man who let a kingdom bleed to keep my name. And I don't know if I was right." Jon Snow didn't know why the Raven had come for him. He was still in the black, still learning to swing a sword right under Sir Alistair's sneer, still struggling to be more than a bastard among thieves and killers at the wall. But the letter had come with a royal seal not addressed to the Night's Watch, but to him directly. He'd read it 3 times and still didn't believe it. "Come to King's Landing. Your father calls you. It is urgent. Lord Eddard Stark. John had never seen Ned's writing look so rushed. No honorifics, no explanations. Just a summons. And John, bound by duty but chained by blood, had found himself standing before Lord Commander Mormont, clutching the parchment. "I shouldn't let you go," Mormont grumbled, staring him down. "But the North needs answers. And if Lord Stark has summoned you, the gods themselves may be involved." So John rode, south, away from the cold truth of the wall, into the Pall. Fire, he had no idea, was waiting. When he arrived in King's Landing, it was nothing like he imagined. He'd pictured it full of gold and banners and honor. Instead, it stank of piss, lies, and heat. Too many people. Too many eyes. Too many secrets. He found Arya first. She ran to him in a quiet corridor, arms tight around his neck. She didn't ask why he'd come. She never needed to. Then Sansa, who barely met his eyes. Then Catelyn. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, not with hate, but with fear. And something else. Pity, maybe. Or shame. "You look like him," she muttered, before walking away. John didn't ask who she meant. He found Ned in the crypts. Of all places, below the keep, where even the fire couldn't follow. His father, no. His uncle stood before the statue of Lyanna Stark, eyes locked on the cold stone face. John stopped behind him. "You called me, my lord?" Ned turned slowly. There was no warmth in his eyes. No anger. Just a weight that looked too heavy for any man to carry. "I did." John waited, uncertain. "Is something wrong?" Ned nodded, more to himself than to John. "Everything is." He gestured for John to follow him, deeper into the crypts. They walked in silence, down past the dead kings of winter, down into a chamber John had never seen before. There, resting on a stone slab, was a chest. Black wood, iron hinges. A wolf carved on one side, a dragon on the other. John's breath caught. "What is this?" Ned placed a hand on the lid. He looked like he wanted to disappear. "This is your truth." John blinked. "My truth?" Ned opened the chest. Inside lay folded parchments, a woman's coat, a silver chain, and on top a scrap of cloth Targaryen red and black. John stepped back. "No," he whispered. Ned faced him. A firelight flickered across his face, aging him even more. "You're not my bastard, John." John shook his head. "What? You are my son?" "But not by blood." John stared, frozen. "You were born to Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark," Ned said. "You are the son of fire and ice, the heir to the Iron Throne." The world tilted. "No," John said again, backing away. "That's not true." "I held you in my arms the day you were born," Ned continued, his voice low and shaking. "Your mother died to protect you. I lied to the realm, lied to Catelyn, lied to you. Because if Robert had known, he would have killed you." John felt like the air was gone from the room. "All my life," he said bitterly, "I thought I was just your shame." Ned's eyes closed. "No, you were my honor." John couldn't breathe, couldn't think. A dragon and a wolf. A bastard of two worlds. A child born of a war no one survived. "What am I supposed to do with this?" he asked, voice breaking. Ned looked at him with tears unshed. "Live. Choose who you are. But know this truth will destroy everything if it's not kept. The throne, the north, the wall. All of it." John stared down at the red and black cloth. The dragon's wings. Stared back. He had always wanted a name. Now he had one. And it might burn the world. The days that followed were the longest of Jon Snow's life. He stayed inside the red keep under Ned's request, hidden behind stone walls in silence, the weight of his true name pressing down on him like iron. He could barely sleep, couldn't eat. Every face in the halls felt like a spy, every glance like a dagger. Even Arya noticed. She asked him what was wrong, and for the first time he lied to her. Nothing, he said. Because what could he tell her? That her half-brother was her cousin? That he carried the blood of the same family Robert Baratheon had sworn to erase? That he was heir to a throne that destroyed everyone who reached for it? He couldn't even say his real name out loud. Aegon Targaryen. It didn't fit. It felt like a stranger's skin. Cold. Wrong. Meanwhile, Robert started noticing. Not just Jon's sudden presence, but Ned's unease, his distance. The king had always trusted Ned blindly, but even old bonds had limits, and Robert had ruled. Long enough to smell when something was being hidden from him. It started with a jest. "I see your bastard's found his way to court," Robert said one night at dinner, voice thick with wine. "Planning to knight him next, Ned?" Ned didn't laugh. "Jon came at my request," he replied evenly. Cersei's eyes flicked up at that. She said nothing, but her fingers tapped the goblet in her hand. Robert leaned back. "You've gone soft. Once you never would have risked bringing him here. You know how the court whispers." "They always whisper," Ned said, voice clipped. "Let them." Later, Varys found Ned in the corridor, his face grave. "The Queen has begun asking questions," he said. "She asked for records of Jon's parentage." Ned's jaw clenched. "Then remove them. Already done. But she is persistent. And she has friends who are less delicate than I." Ned turned to him. "Why warn me?" Varys tilted his head. "Because I prefer a realm that doesn't burn." Petyr Baelish was worse. He didn't ask questions. He made suggestions. Disgustingly polite, poisoned with implication. "Strange, isn't it," he said to Ned one morning, "how that boy of yours doesn't quite look like a Snow, doesn't carry the Stark build, not really." "I suggest you watch your words, Lord Baelish," Ned said, voice low. "Of course. But if others start noticing, it'd be a shame if the Queen thought you were hiding a dragon in wolf's clothing." Ned knew then. The walls were closing in. Jon couldn't stay here. That night, Ned came to his room with a bundle in hand-dark clothing, a travel cloak, and a sealed letter. "You need to leave," he said. "Now, before they come looking." Jon stood. "Where?" "North," Ned said. "To Howland Reed. He's one of the few men alive who knows the truth. He'll protect you. He knows what you are. And what am I, exactly?" Jon snapped. "A prince? A threat? A lie?" Ned looked wounded. "You're my son. Maybe not in blood, but in every way that matters. I raised you. I bled for you. And now I'd die to keep you safe." Jon turned away, breathing hard. "What happens if I stay?" "They'll find out," Ned said. "And if they do, Robert will put your head on a spike. Not because he wants to, but because the realm demands it. And Cersei, she might do worse." Jon looked at the letter. "And what is this?" "Proof," Ned said. "But don't open it yet. Not until you're with Reed." Jon nodded. Slowly, but there was fire in his eyes now. "What if I don't run? What if I stay? Claim my name, my right?" Ned's voice broke. "Then the realm burns." They embraced in silence. Ned kissed his brow like a father, not a lord, not a liar. By dawn, Jon Snow was gone from the Red Keep, disguised, cloaked, heading north by river. But Cersei Lannister had already noticed. She stood at her window, watching the black-cloaked figure vanish into the mist. "That's not his bastard," she murmured to herself. "That's something else." She turned to Sir Jaime. "Follow him." Howland Reed hadn't seen Jon Snow since he was a swaddled infant in in the arms of a dying girl. Now the boy knew. The man stood at the edge of Greywater Watch, cloaked in river mud and silence, his eyes carrying the storm of 1,000 questions. Howland watched him from the ramparts and felt the past creep back like moss between stones. "Bring him to me," he told his guards, though they were barely needed. Jon came without a fight. He looked tired, hunted, but not broken. Inside, the reed-covered halls of Greywater, Jon stood before the man who had once fought beside Ned Stark at the Tower of Joy, whose sword had spilled blood to protect a secret not even the gods dared speak aloud. "You're Reed?" Jon asked. "I am." "And you're the boy they all thought was a Snow." Jon dropped the letter on the table between them. "He told me to give you this." Reed took the wax-sealed parchment, eyes scanning it without opening. He didn't need to read it. He already knew what it said. Still, he broke the seal, read the words slowly, and sighed. "So it's come to that. I need the truth," Jon said. Reed looked up. "Are you sure?" Jon nodded. "He's gone quiet. I think something's happened. And now I have spies following me. I need to know what I am, what they're afraid of." Howland Reed stood, walked to the hearth, and tossed the parchment into the flames. Jon's eyes widened. "You burned it. It doesn't matter what's written," Reed said. "It matters what's lived." Then he looked Jon square in the eye. "You are Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, the last living, heir to the Iron Throne. That is your blood. That is the fire inside you." Jon didn't speak. Couldn't. The words felt like chains snapping open. And yet, he felt more trapped than ever. "My whole life, I thought I was a mistake," he muttered. "A shame Ned carried." Reed stepped forward. "He carried you because he loved you, and because the truth would have gotten you killed. He made a choice to save you and the realm." Jon shook his head. "Then why tell me now?" "Because Cersei is digging. Because Robert is slipping. Because the realm is crumbling. The secret kept you safe, but it can't keep Westeros from falling apart." Before Jon could answer, a horn blew from the marshes. Reed's eyes darkened. "Visitors." Jon moved to the window. In the distance, 3 riders moved through the water. No banners, no sigils. But their movements were too sharp to be common folk. Reed turned to his son, Jojen. "Get nearer. Find out who they are." Jon's hand dropped to his sword. "You think they followed me?" "I think someone always does," Reed said grimly. "That's what happens when your name threatens." Kings. Back in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister paced her chambers like a caged lioness. "Gone," she spat. "Just vanished. No trail, no guards." Shaim leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You really believe he's a threat?" "He's not a Snow," Cersei hissed. "He doesn't look like Ned, doesn't act like a northern bastard. And Ned Stark doesn't bring his filth into the capital, unless he has a reason." Shaim tilted his head. "What reason?" Cersei's eyes narrowed. "What if he's not a bastard? What if he's something worse?" She held up an old piece of parchment one she'd bribed a Mester to find. A record from Dorne. A quiet marriage between Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna. Stark, not annulled, not denied. "Jon Snow isn't Ned's shame," Cersei whispered. "He's Rhaegar's legacy." Shaim straightened. "That would make him the true heir to the Iron Throne," Cersei said, voice filled with venom, "which means he dies." Back at Greywater Watch, Mira returned with a bow in hand and blood on her sleeve. "They were Lannister spies," she said. "Paid in. Gold, won alive, barely." Reed looked at Jon. "The game has begun." Jon stared into the fire, the words echoing inside him. Heir to the Iron Throne, Aegon Targaryen. He didn't want the crown. He didn't want the war. But war had found him. The raven came at dawn. Its feathers were black as obsidian, and the scroll it carried bore the royal seal of King Robert Baratheon himself. The words within were heavy, brief, and edged with suspicion. Lord Stark is arrested for treason. Return at once. He confessed to plotting to place a Targaryen on the throne. Jon read it 3 times before the shaking stopped. He stood in the middle of Greywater Watch, knuckles white around the parchment, heart breaking in silence. Treason. Ned Stark no, Eddard Targaryen, a man who had given up a kingdom to keep him safe, was now imprisoned for trying to protect him. Howland Reed watched him carefully. They're moving faster than we thought. Jon looked up hollow. What does this mean? Reed's voice was like wind through dead trees. It means they know. In King's Landing, Cersei's plan was already unfolding. With Ned locked in the dungeons, stripped of his title and dignity, she stood above it all, like a queen carved from malice. Let him rot, she told Pycelle. He confessed. It's over. Pycelle cleared his throat nervously. He only confessed after your guards broke 3 of his fingers, Your Grace. She smiled. Then we should break the rest, to ensure the truth stays consistent. But behind closed doors, Robert Baratheon was anything but calm. He stormed through the Red Keep like a bull ready to gore anyone who stood in his path. Treason? He roared at Cersei. Ned Stark? He wouldn't raise his voice, let alone a rebellion. Cersei crossed her arms. He admitted to it. Claimed Rhaegar's bastard is alive. Saiki brought him to court. That boy you had wine with Snow, he's no Snow. Robert's face darkened. He remembered the boy. Brooding, quiet, a bit like Rhaegar had been. Ned wouldn't lie, too. Robert muttered, though his voice had lost conviction. He lied for years, Cersei snapped. He raised the dragon's spawn under your nose. In your kingdom, that's not honor. That's treason. Silence stretched. Robert looked down at his shaking hands. If it's true, if that boy really is Rhaegar's, then he's a threat to your sons, Cersei said. The irony stabbed Robert in the gut, because they both knew his sons weren't his at all. But he nodded anyway. Then we kill him. In the swamps of the neck, Jon stood before Howland, blade at his side. They've arrested him because of me, he said. I have to go back. You'll be killed the moment you step into the city. Then I'll go in the shadows, Jon growled. I won't let them hang him for protecting me. Reed looked at him with that old, ghosted expression, like he was seeing the Tower of Joy all over again. Your father once fought 7 men to protect a secret. Now you'll risk the realm to honor him? Jon nodded. He's the only father I've ever known. Reed sighed. Then you'll need more than honor. You'll need allies. They made for White Harbor, quietly, with cloaks and forged names. There, Reed summoned a few old friendsmen who owed favors. Some remembered Rhaegar fondly. Others hated the Lannisters more than they feared dragons. By the time Jon reached the edge of the capital's outskirts, he had 8 riders behind him and a stolen Lannister banner. He wasn't planning to start a war. He was planning to end a lie. In the shadows of the city, Varys met them quietly. I warned him this day would come, the spider whispered. But he never ran, not even when he should have. Will he be executed? Jon asked. Unless someone speaks louder than the queen. And what if I scream fire? Jon asked, stepping closer. Varys gave a faint smile. Then make sure the realm hears it. In the Red Keep's blackest cell, Ned Stark looked up as the door creaked open. A torch flickered, and there, cloaked in shadows, stood Jon Snow. No longer a boy. No longer a bastard. You shouldn't have come. Ned rasped. I had to. Their hands met through the bars. They know, Jon whispered, and they're coming for me next. Ned nodded weakly. Then don't stay. You carry the blood of kings, Jon, but you have to choose how to wear it. I'll wear it for you, Jon said, because you bled to protect it. Outside the cell, the city held its breath. Inside it, the last living Targaryen planned to rise. The bell of Beller's sept rang once, not for prayer, not for mourning, but for justice. King's Landing had gathered beneath a burning sun, crowds swelling in the square like ants around a feast. Nobles, beggars, spies, and killers, everyone wanted to see the fall of the North's honor. The traitor, Lord Eddard Stark, was to kneel and confess again, publicly, and then be sent to the wall, or so the story went. But stories change, and some burn. Jon Snow Aegon Targaryen stood in the crowd, hooded, heart hammering in his chest. His eyes locked on the wooden platform in front of Beller's statue, where his father No, his uncle, was dragged out in chains. Pale, bloody, barely standing. The High Septon cleared his throat. Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, Lord Paramount of House Stark, do you confess your crimes against the crown? Ned raised his head slowly. His eyes scanned the crowd. And then, for the first time in decades, they settled on the only truth that mattered. Jon, he gave the faintest nod, then turned to the Septon and spoke. I confess. A wave of noise crashed through the square. I lied, Ned continued, voice rasping. I claimed the boy known as Jon Snow was my bastard. He is not. Gasps spread like wildfire. He is the true-born son of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, wed in secret. I raised him to protect him from those who would murder him as a child. Robert, from his seat above, turned white. He is Aegon Targaryen, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And just like that, the world shattered. Cersei rose from her throne with venom in her eyes. Lies! Seize them both, she screamed, but she was too late. From the crowd, Jon threw off his cloak. A dozen swords unsheathed around him as Howland Reed's men surged forward, cutting down gold cloaks before they knew what hit them. Mira fired an arrow straight through a guard's eye, and Jon climbed the steps to the stage like a storm coming home. Steel rang, people screamed. Chaos erupted. Jaime Lannister rushed forward, blade drawn, but Varys stepped into his path with a command that froze the Kingslayer. Mid-step, the realm will remember what side you choose. Up on the platform, Jon stood beside Ned, his sword Longclaw drawn. Come with me, he said. Ned shook his head. I won't make it down those steps. Jon's voice cracked. Then I'll fight for you. Ned's bloodied hand touched his shoulder. No, you'll live for me. That's what matters now. Behind them, Robert Baratheon stood, his face torn between rage and grief. For a moment, he saw not a Targaryen, but a boy who reminded him of Lyanna. Her eyes, her stubbornness, her fire. He didn't speak, but he didn't stop the chaos either. Jon turned to face the crowd, his voice clear, defiant. My name is Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, and I will not run any more. A single rider galloped into the square area, sword in hand, covered in blood. She leapt onto the platform beside Jon. You shouldn't face this alone, she said. Another surprise. From the shadows stepped Gendry, hammer slung across his back. Neither should a king. All around, swords were drawn, some in fear, some in loyalty, some in confusion. The city held its breath. And then the bells rang again, not once, but 3 times. It wasn't justice now. It was war. Ned Stark died in the dungeons that night. Poison, they said. Quiet, painless. Cersei called it mercy. Jon knew better. Robert abdicated 3 days. Later, drunk, broken, and afraid of the wildfire rising in his court. Cersei vanished. Some said she fled to Casterly Rock. Others claimed she made a deal with the Iron Bank. But the people remembered the moment Jon stood before them, blade drawn, name revealed, with fire in his voice and his father's ghost beside him. And in time, they began to whisper his name not as a threat, but as a king, Aegon, the last dragon, the wolf that bled fire, and Westeros would never be the same again.